is this is a special council meeting that will focus on a review of the Township of Warwick budget for 2023 and expenditures to date at the end of the Q2 2023. I remind everybody that pecuniary interest and conflict of interest rules and regulations. Does anybody have a conflict of interest, council? If not, declare it at the proper time. Also welcome everybody who's viewing through YouTube. And I'm also going to now do the acknowledgement of ancestral lands. We acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered here today, Township of Warwick, is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, as well as the many Indigenous nations in Ontario's footsteps have marked these for centuries. We also wish to acknowledge that we are situated on Treaty 29 and Treaty 25 territories signed by Chippewa chiefs and offer our respect and gratitude for these lands. I'm now going to move on to 5A, Councillor Commitment Days. I'll start with Councillor Manning. Anything to update us on, Councillor Manning?
No, I have nothing.
Deputy Mayor Kallenberg?
I have nothing.
Councillor Morris?
I have nothing at this time.
Councillor Westgate?
I have nothing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Westgate. Councillor items, I'm going to reverse the fashion and what I asked the last question. Councillor Westgate, did you have anything for Councillor items? Councillor Morris?
I have nothing.
Councillor Kallenberg?
I have nothing.
Councillor Manning?
I have nothing.
The only thing I have that I'll highlight today is that had a couple conversations around the EA process around the landfill. Spoke to Minister McNaughton as well as Minister Pacini, just to let them know that we want to make sure that the EA process when it comes to the landfill is a thorough process and the people of Warwick have the opportunity to obviously have their say when it comes to that EA expansion. So a couple of good chats with the ministers and they heard us. And again, we're hoping for a thorough EA process as we've talked about here as a council in the past. So that's all I've got. So thank you. So we'll go on to number 6, staff items. We have this is going to be a verbal update from Trevor Jarrett, Treasurer Deputy CAO and Asset Management Ontario presentation. Anyways, Trevor, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Case. Since OREG 58817 came into effect, demanding certain things to changes for asset management plans and specific timelines, we've worked diligently with council support to meet those deadlines. We were one of the first to produce an asset management strategy that I think was pretty much copied by a lot of our peers. We finished our core assets 6 months prior to when they had to be in by participating in programs that were offered free of charge from the province, be it Amp It Up 2.0 and other working groups. We were part of a coalition of 5 municipalities that got funding from FCM to help fund our efforts on that. And then we produced that 6 months ahead of time. Right now, the deadline is for all other assets by July 1st, 2024. And presently we're working on 3 different programs. Amp It Up 3.0 training, whereby we're working on a level of services for facilities and all other assets. We're also working with the Lambton County Asset Management Group. And finally, we're working with Asset Management Ontario to receive free training to specifically help us. They've identified our efforts as being somewhat ahead of the curve. We also took advantage of a program last year that NAMS Canada and the Institute of Public Works Australia put in place, whereby we have 3 people who are now on staff that are professionally certified in asset management planning. The course fee was $2,500 per person. Through FCM funding, 90% of that was covered by FCM. And right now they're coming up with a climate change portion. And it's going to be the same situation whereby 90% is going to be covered by FCM or some sort of amount. Asset Management Ontario is now going out and recommending for the future of all organizations have a GIS asset manager in place so that future iterations have visual linkage to asset management plans. Warwick took the step to do that 2 years ago at the basically the recommendation of Public Service Digest, who saw this coming down the pipeline in legislation. And with that, Brianna has been leading the charge on that. In that respect, Asset Management Ontario asked her to make a presentation at the next training session for the Southwestern Ontario cohort, which they're trying to find a date that works to have the LCC host that event. Asset Management Ontario has also asked the Township of Warwick be put forward to FCM for a profile on the actions taken by council and staff regarding asset management plan to date, as I feel we're leaders amongst our peers with the same population size. And with that, I'd just like to have council's direction on whether or not we should move forward with that profile.
Okay, anybody have any questions to start? Yes, Councillor Westgate.
I guess just how much time and effort are you gonna have to put into it, and are you gonna be away from your job for a while because of it?
For me, I won't be putting any time or effort into it. It'll be Brianna, which is her day-to-day job to embrace that, and she'll be the one making the presentation. And I think it's pretty much the lessons that we have learned through the certification process last year that are going to be tied into how her role works.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, anybody have any concerns about moving forward and working with FCM on this? Councillor Morris?
Trevor, is this something that's gonna happen anyway, whether we want it or not?
No, we've been approached previously and we've kind of asked for it not to happen because we enjoyed working quietly in the sidelines. However, this is the third time we've been asked by the third different group. And I think it's time either we lead or we lightly decline again.
Anyone else? No? So I guess what you're asking for, Trevor, you're asking for more or less, I guess, approval of some sort to move forward to this. Am I understanding it correctly?
If we move forward, I'd like to have council's blessing. Right now, I'm very content working in the background, but I think Brianna speaking to her peers would be a very positive move for us. And if council decides having the endorsement for FCM is something that's good in terms of putting a profile on their website, I'm all for that too.
Okay, thank you. How does council wish to deal with this? I guess I'd call it a request of sorts. Councillor Morris?
Well, I think it's better to be a front runner than running behind, so I'll support it.
That would be a motion. Then,
Yes, it
Councillor.
is.
Do we have a seconder to that motion? Yes, Councillor Manning. Further discussion, if any? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Very good. I guess what we'll do, Trevor, is we'll go to 6B, another verbal update, and this one's surrounding allocations for the Watford 150th, which was a very successful event, and actual expenditures. So I'll turn it over to you again, Trevor.
Thank you, Mayor Case. At this time, the funds that are available to the committee came in at roughly $175,000. The biggest proponents of that are there's a reserve, federal grant, merchandise sales, and the budget from council of $70,000 this year. Expenditures are tracking towards 140 to 145,000. So the money that has been put forward by council will not be used, but I cannot give you a final answer on it because the cutoff date that was put to all the committee members was to have their expenses in today. I will continue to work at it, and hopefully for the 14th, I'll have a trued up number, and I will continue update accordingly.
Okay, well, thank you, Trevor. Anybody have any questions, inquiries? I guess we'll just wait and we'll know what the actuals are. It is under budget, which is good. And it was a very successful event. There's no doubt about that. Okay, well, thank you, Trevor. We're going to move on to 7. We're going to go to 7A, and that's Amanda Gubbles is going to give us an update on the 2023 capital budget projects, end of Q2 2023. Amanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Case and Council. Would you prefer the presentation on the screen, or are you happy with you have it right in front of you? Okay. And so, and our Chief Goodhill is joining us as well. So appreciate the opportunity to provide council an update on the capital budget as at the end of Q2, so the end of June. This is just a brief, although it's 28 slides, it will be brief summary of where every project is. But where there are questions, do feel free to interject. And I know our departmental managers are here to support any specific questions that I'm unable to answer. The good thing about Warwick's budget process, one of our strengths is the early approval, and it does allow the staff team to get out or tenders out relatively early and get projects going. So we benefit from that when we do this update. Just a summary of overall items. I want to highlight that 17% of our capital budget has been spent to date. But that doesn't include the committed spending. So that just means the actual amount spent. Committed obviously is much greater. And as you know, we've made many reallocations to date, which is a practice we have, I think, also benefited from being able to find surpluses and reallocate to additional projects. In one case, we expanded the scope drastically of a road project by finding savings in the budget. And this is a great number. In terms of grant funding for 2023 alone, we have obtained $220,000 to support our capital projects this year. And I want to note that that does not include the funding that we've obtained for water main redesign on the Sunset, Erie, and streets in Warwick Township. So we have an allocation this year, but it's not included in that grant number. So what I did to prepare this presentation is I actually went through the budget binder and every single project is on this summary. So with the same labeling. So in terms of minor capital for development, we have a wayfinding project. We had 50,000 allocated this year and we carried 10 from last year. We did award the total RFP for just under 19 or just over 19,500. But we were successful in getting grant funding to support the project with an additional 18,000. The money, so even though the RFP was for 19.5, we will have additional expenditures to actually manufacture the signs. So the study scope was to design the signs and placement and those kinds of things, but the installation costs, what we still believe will be on budget and will be completed by the end of the year as required by the grant funding. We are anticipating bringing designs to council soon and have noted to the contractor that the designs need to be provided. I think it was the August 28th meeting. Is that the one we targeted? Moving on to environmental. So Aqua, as our provider for water and sewer services, does oversee all of our capital improvements related to water and sewer. So even though we do have quarterly meetings with Aqua, to date, we don't have any big capital expenditure on the parts they oversee, but they will be done by the end of the year. The meter replacement program is something we've partnered with Blue Water Power on for many years. And we're at about almost 20,000 in expenditures. And that program updates water meters, old water meters, and in both our rural and urban areas, and allows us to, over time, has captured a lot of water loss that we've had. So by upgrading our meters, we've been able to mitigate the tracking of some water loss. So we continue that program annually, and we work with Blue Water Power to identify where it needs to be replaced, and they help us prioritize. Minor capital environmental. So this is the lagoon site and related areas. So again, we're showing no expenditures to date, but that's not unusual for this time of year. So we will continue to work with Aqua and ensure that those projects are completed so our lagoons keeps on functioning well. In minor capital for our general government team, we do have a few items. Computers, we allocated $10,000 this year. However, we haven't spent any. So we may re-examine that number in the future. We have a system for tracking computers to make sure everyone has up-to-date equipment that functions. Zoning bylaw project with other planning priorities. This has not been started yet, but is intended to be kicked off in September. We will be matching our previous OP update process, which was a joint process with a few other municipalities, obtaining an external consultant to help. This expenditure, though, of 30,000 just represents the Warwick's municipal balance towards that project that's anticipated. And then we also have $35,000 budgeted for a facility condition assessment, but this has not been issued yet because we want to do the work that Trevor was speaking about to ensure we have data on our non-core assets included. That's correct. Yeah. All right, general government. So our strategic plan, we allocated $30,000 in the budget. To date, we've spent just over 6,000. The RFP, including the add-on for public consultation, what came in under just under $27,000. The project's in progress and on track to be completed in September.
Question on that one, Amanda, if I
Sure.
could. So are we expecting any reduction on the $27,000 based on maybe what I'll say is performance of the individuals that are looking after it? Were we looking for any discounts when it comes to that?
Yes, so I have had a preliminary conversation with the consultant about attendance at an open house and the expenditure that was allocated to that in the budget. And so verbally, we've had that conversation, but I haven't seen the results. But we will continue to follow up on that concern, Mayor Case. Thank you. So general government, moving into the regular larger expenditures. We do have, we had a budget carried over for office furniture, and we have completed any purchases we need. So there will be a surplus identified there. No?
It's a capital lease purchase, so it's going to be a 3-year project.
$60,000 every year. Okay, my apologies. That is an error. So that is the amount spent to date. ERP migration, as council knows, we had some conversation on this allocation of 270,000. And after reviewing further, council approved the repurposing of 220,000 to Burnham. That's supposed to be Line Road improvements to do an additional block. So that has been included in that project scope. And we retained $50,000 in that project with a scope specifically focused on Parks and Recreation software, with an intent of hopefully finding a program to enhance services, we'll say, and efficiency for Parks and Rec from our current software system. Recreation. So we did have one minor item, which was installing a flagpole at the Warwick Park. And I do know the foundation has been poured and it was set up actually for last week, however, has been rescheduled to this week. So will be completed very shortly. And in Parks and Recreation generally, we do have a budget allocation for the north parking lot of the ELCC. This was just a reminder, there was some discussion during the budget. This was just to provide a concrete pad at the exit of the workshop to allow for snow removal from the ice and that area. So Parks and Rec and Public Works have been working together to tender that together, and along with some work at the Watford shop. So they were able to obtain some efficiencies and a total cost for both projects at the Watford shop and the ELCC was $53,000, leaving a combined budget surplus of $45,000. The work is underway and will be completed at the ELCC prior to ice in, which was important for putting ice in. That's good. And the resurfacing tennis court project, you've all seen our recent announcement of great news. That has been completed and was bundled with as an additional some additional work, installing some pathways and some fitness equipment, which was all grant supported with almost $108,000 in grant funding. Parks and Recreation. So the control panel upgrades are on our work plan for Parks and Rec, no expenditures to date. And then the old fire hall and museum is budgeted for 100. We've spent just under 24,000 to date. And as you know, some improvements to the facility were made in advance of the 150th, but they are able to be funded back through the grant funding we've received for that project of just under $90,000. So that's great news. And Parks and Rec is working on putting a larger plan together to revitalize that facility and hopefully get it, more open and accessible. The truck for Parks and Recreation. This was again a combined purchase. We purchased 2 trucks this year, or 2 pickup trucks, one in Parks and Rec and one in Public Works, and combined awarded an RFP for $135,000. Both vehicles are ordered and pending delivery information. If council recalls, there was another reallocation to support this purchase. So it did come in a bit higher than we anticipated, but we were able to find savings with some other work that we were carrying in our budget backlog that was completed with operational money. So the EV charging stations at the ELCC had already been completed, and then the library windows had already been completed. So we were able to reallocate to cover that expenditure. The asphalt shingle replacement at the library is complete, coming in under budget at, I'll say $10,500 from the 17.5 budget. And we are working on finding a contractor to do the work to the Arena Foundation, and Parks and Rec is actively looking to do that. And we have a budget of $85,000, but nothing spent yet.
Library, not Arena.
Thank you. The library. I'm even staring at the library on this slide. Thank you for that. Okay, switching over to roadways, we have a number of minor capital items. So the bridge and culvert inspections process, again, required by OSIM to be done every 2 years, has been awarded and is planned to be completed in the fall, as is the typical process for those inspections. And we do have our annual allocations to sidewalks, paving, and municipal drains. You'll see the actual expenditure for municipal drains to date, but that work is ongoing and kind of depends on projects. I think it looked like Councillor Morris had a question.
Just a quick one, the sidewalk repair, is that including Warwick Village? Because we had some complaints about them out there.
Yes, those were anticipated to tackle those in August.
Thank you. So the Watford paving and sidewalks will be looked at in August. And I just want to highlight that our Public Works team is looking to do the work themselves in-house related to sidewalks, which is great to see our team develop their skills and use them to support our operations.
You're gonna do the finishing too, and
Yes, they are.
we had some of that done years ago and it was very bad. I just want to make sure that they have some good training on it or something.
Yep, I'm confident with the skills within our team right now that they can do a fantastic job.
So minor capital, also the truck, the tandem truck has been ordered. We had a budget of 400,000. Actually, it hasn't been ordered. Trucks are interesting these days with supply and demand. So the truck is in the 2023 allocation for purchase, but the window for our supplier company to order has not opened yet due to supply chain issues. So we're like the top of the queue. That's not an official queue yet, but Andrew is continuing to follow up with them to complete that purchase. And we'll keep you posted for sure. And then the other one is the combined purchase with 2 trucks already noted. Moving on to roadways, we have had these are all site 14 and 41, all guide rails or culvert or related improvements. So I won't speak to the nature, but you can see the budget and actual of site 14 is complete and site 41 is awarded and planned to be started soon. Site 60 on the next slide is complete. Site 62 is complete. And then this is the Sunset Erie St. Clair John water main infrastructure. We have a budget of $300,000 to support drawings, which we have in-house. We have not reviewed them detailed as a staff team yet, but that we did receive grant funding for this out of the 2/3 funding model from the province and the federal government. So we're anticipating to complete the upgrades by the end of 2026, which is just the design happening this year is kind of the planned expenditure. Churchill Line is complete. And I don't know how I have a 0 expenditure there. That might be an error. It wasn't free, so I will have to go ahead, Andrew.
It's just recently been completed and the asphalt cost hasn't been included, so, but it is freshly completed.
Yes, I guess one of the questions I have, do we expect that to come in under budget or around budget, over budget? Any idea?
The culvert line or the Churchill line culvert specifically, yeah, it should be just a hair under budget or bang on.
Thank you. Industrial Drive extension. We had 200,000 budgeted. We awarded an RFP for 231,000. The project is 95% complete with the top coat planned in 2024. To date, this is what I mean, the difference between what we've spent today versus what's under contract. So today we've spent $24,000, but we will spend $231,000 by the process being completed. And this 30K over budget is planned to be covered by another capital project shortfall. So we've identified a few areas where there's been surplus, or if at the end of the year we do have reserves, we could transfer to cover the balance. But we think we can find it in operational savings so far. The Warwick Garage and Salt Shed, we budgeted 100,000 for this year. Plus we carried over from 2022, 1.03 million. Andrew is working with our engineer and architect to design that, and the tender package is in development. It is almost ready, and we intend for that to be tendered this week. So we'll be able to report back to council with pricing and options to move that project forward also. Roadways. So we also have Zion Line asphalt repairs and replacement. So we did budget 200,000 plus we had 423,000 from last year in reserves. To date, we've spent 180,000. The intent behind the work was to extend the life of the road and lower the life cycle costing with the road itself generally. During construction, there has been some challenges with the road base found by the contractor, and they've done some additional testing. So they do still have some work to do and surface treatment to be completed, and repairing some asphalt as well.
So on Zion Line, I don't know about the rest of council, but I've had some complaints about the roadway and how rough it is. And I did ask Andrew, I did have a chat with Andrew just before the meeting to see what the status was. And I understand the integrity of the road in some places was softer and needs to be improved. And I asked the question if we felt that was going to cost us more than what we budgeted for, if it's going to make a big change in the budget overall. And also asked about the integrity of the road as far as the condition. And I'll let you, Andrew, maybe if you could answer that question for everybody, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Case. So I do want to stress that, yeah, the project is not complete at this time. So there's still a decent amount of work to be completed. Mostly focusing on the surface treatment, so the tar and chip, so to speak. On the asphalt issues, so we do have a geotech on site identifying two separate areas where we've had some segregation in the asphalt. So they're going to help determine what the actual issue was. Was it an asphalt issue or is it a base issue? And come up with a solution. Pretty minor, very confident we're going to come up with a pretty economical way to fix that. So they hold up long term. And I do want to stress that these maintenance measures that are being completed on the road help keep the road at a safe drivable state. And for life cycle costing long term, this is the most economical way to get the most dollars out of your road. There's another issue by the old landfill waste management entrance, the old entrance off of Zion. There's a bit of a dip there that we're going to identify, but again, confident we're going to get that repaired. No problem.
Okay, and the other part of that was, do the engineers bear any responsibility for these flaws was one part of the question I asked as well today, because again, a lot of these things just seem to happen. And I know there was some talk we had during budget about how we were going about the construction meeting. So that was a question. Maybe you could answer that one as well, Andrew.
Thanks, Mayor Case. So one of the decisions we make prior to a project is whether we're going to do full geotechnical investigation on the entire road, and which can be extremely costly. So it's in a lot of cases with our rural roads, it's more economical to hire geotech when needed. And this is one of those cases where, you know, there was an issue found after the fact. It's still going to be a lot less costly than if you were to do full geotechnical investigation on the entire road, where 80 to 90% of it would never need it because it's structurally sound. So these additional costs, while I don't think they'd be borne by the engineer themselves, I think it's still good money spent. It's more economical doing it in the way we have.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you. So moving on to Burnham Road, repairs and asphalt replacement. So we have a total budget combined with a reallocation of $795,000. And to date, we've spent just over $6,000. But this project was awarded and will be completed by October 15th based on the tender documents. We also have the Watford Garage aggregate storage, and this is, well, you know what that is. We have a budget of 50,000. And again, this is the one Public Works and Parks and Rec combined in purchasing and achieved a surplus of $45,000 by doing that and doing both projects together. And Warwick Fire Services, you will see their minor capital work, which they purchase as needed. So they will continue to monitor and update their equipment as needed. The floor resurfacing at Warwick Fire Station is complete and came in just under budget by a few thousand dollars. So that's great news. The Watford Fire Services also has their minor capital allocations, and our chiefs monitor these and do updates and upgrades as needed. So depending on how many new firefighters they get and what the annual allocation is. So Watford Fire, just like Warwick, will continue to monitor and make purchases as needed, given those allocations. Watford Fire also has an expenditure of $300,000 budgeted for this year to address the structural challenges at the site. We do have on file a request from council to see that information before it's issued, and we continue to work with the engineer to obtain the proposed scope of work and package. I do know Ryan follows up regularly to try to get that information. So once we have it, you will see it, council, and we can discuss next steps. The generator replacement at the Watford Fire Station is complete. If you recall, this was an emergency repair and was completed in a very timely manner, which we're grateful for. We have our emergency sites able to function. That's great. So council, that is the update of the capital budget highlights that we have prepared for you today. But we are happy, of course, to take any questions as they arise.
Does anybody have any questions on the presentation? Seeing none? Thank you very much. I'm going to ask for a motion to receive and file the report that Amanda just gave. Councillor Westgate, Councillor Manning, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're going to go to 7B, and that's Trevor. Trevor's going to give us an update on the 2023 operating budget and ELCC usage and of Q2 2023. Trevor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Case. Essentially what I presented is the granularity that goes to all the budget managers who have operation budgets, from the fire chiefs to everybody sitting at this table. And we do it quarterly. It tells us exactly whether or not they're going on budget, over budget, or whether or not they've got money to spare. And the reason why we do that is it provides flexibility to address areas of concern. I've said it and I will say it until the day I retire. A budget's great the day I publish it. It's out of date 2 hours later because the world changes. Fortunately, we've got flexibility in both ways. The seasonal components of roads, if you look at it, we're probably over right now. However, we now are in the summer, so our winter condition budget will come back in line. Our sidewalk budget will come back in line. Anything that has an insurance allocation to it, insurance is paid in Q1. So it's going to appear to be over budget, but it comes back as the year comes on because it's basically essentially a prepaid and we don't allocate it that way. The big ones that I think we should look at, and it was disclosed when we did the budget, Ryan has provided a first draft of the LCC. We are going to right size the building over time. Last year, for the discontinued Centennial Hall, we had 8,000 in rentals. We budgeted 14,000 for the ELCC this year. And so far to date, we're at 13.5 and we're tracking towards 25. So again, it's part of the right sizing it and getting all the various different revenues and expenditure streams. And we will continue to work on that. And this exercise allows us to do it. It allows me to have conversations with the fire chiefs to see exactly what's missing in their budget and whether or not we can find money, and anything that in past years from fire departments that have gone unspent, we've put into reserves to help address anything that's going to be underspent. Overspent in future years, so that we aren't going to be coming back to council because an emergency within a fire department is something that's a health and safety issue, and we're trying to fund it without having to reopen the budget. Other than that, I open to questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Trevor?
On your
Yes, go ahead, Councillor.
The fire department's wages. Why is Watford so much more than Warwick?
Volume of calls.
Volume of calls? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Their training budgets are very similar. Their fees are the same in terms of what they all get charged out at. However, it's just strictly volume of calls.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions of Trevor on this particular piece of business? Seeing none? Okay, let's move on to 7C. C was added today, council. I don't know if everybody saw it or not. It's a verbal report from Trevor on long-term debt and debt repayment. Trevor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor Case. I apologize for not getting this out sooner. It's something that I intended to, but ran short of days prior to getting at the agenda. Essentially heading into 2023, our total debt is $3 million. What we get from the federal government the provincial government based upon our own source revenues, which is their determination of annual repayment limits, are roughly for 20 years, if we're carrying debt for 20 years, $26 million at 5% or $22 million at 7%. I would never recommend you approach that. With the onboarding of the LCC and the completion of there, we will have a discussion on that future. But it will take us over roughly 50% of where we can be, but there is still capacity in case of emergency. And that's the reason why I included it.
Councillor Westgate.
Trevor, what'd you say our total debt was?
Going into 2023, before the LCC gets added, it's $3 million.
I thought we owed more than that on the water and the sewer even.
The lagoon is $2 million. The arena accessibility is 450. And then we have Warwick Community Center of 350. Those are the ones that are outstanding at the start of this year.
The fire truck?
Fire truck is, pardon me, 174th. So that's what composes our total. We've been paying down the sewage lagoon for a decade.
Well, we paid it.
Yeah.
We've paid it off in our time and went back in debt again on it in my time.
Remember that as well, Councillor Westgate. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, Councillor Morse.
Trevor, can you tell me what the arena accessibility is? It's 462,000. What was that? Was that like just handicap and stuff like that? What do you mean by accessibility?
It predates me. That's what the project was called, but it was the enhancement to the south side of the arena with the new entrance and the upstairs. And that's what the project was.
Okay.
So just doing the math and making sure everybody in the public understands as well. So that's $3 million plus the money owing on the new community center, which is $9 million. Am I correct?
$9 million is owing on the new community center, and that'll be added in 2023. And we will discuss it on a later agenda item.
Yes, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions on C? Seeing none, thank you very much, Trevor. Appreciate that. Let's go to 8A, and that's municipal agreement for East Lambton YMCA services. For council's information, and just so everybody knows, I actually asked Amanda to add this to the agenda because, again, a lot of us weren't here when those agreements were entered into. There's 3 of us that were not. So it's as much an information piece on how it works as much as anything, because I'll be very honest with you. I did ask for some information and clarity on this when I first started. But again, I think it's important that we all realize and understand it works. So Amanda, I'm going to turn it over to you, please.
Thanks, Mayor Case. So, I mean, as you said, this is just provided for background information. In hindsight, I said to Mayor Case, we should have put it in our council orientation package, but it was the first time we've done orientation with this agreement in place. So we'll make a note for future. But essentially, the summary is outlined in the agreement. The municipality retains ownership of this space in the YMCA. We completed all of the fit up for that location, and we also own the capital equipment. The idea being that if we ever chose to end the lease agreement or service agreement with the YMCA, the municipality could walk in there and run the service. So the ownership is maintained by the township. And in terms of our ongoing compensation to the YMCA, we do pay them an annual management fee of $50,000. I actually think it's $52,000 this year because it increases by $2,000 every year for the 5-year term of the agreement. And that's based, it increases $2,000 every time we achieve over 365 members. So like 100, we targeted 265 members, and every 100 people that use that facility past that, we pay an additional $2,000 per year. And that management fee is invoiced to us monthly. It covers all of their staffing, training, point of sale system, HR, research for programs and best practices. It's essentially our contribution to that service every year. If the one note that council might be interested in is if there is a surplus of the operation, so it generates revenue, it's shared equally between the YMCA and the township. But if there is a deficit, the township through our contract is obligated to cover that. Now, the one thing I want to point out is the YMCA does meet regularly, monthly, with our Parks and Rec team. They overview any budgetary flags, we'll say, if there's anything of note. And they talk about services and opportunities and the facility itself. That's the summary I have on expenditures, unless there's any additional questions from council.
Does anybody on council have any questions on this piece of business? Yes, Councillor Westgate.
I thought the more members they had, the less we paid. And do we know, are they running a deficit or are they ahead money?
Great question. So it does balance out. So the more members they have, the less proportionally we pay per member, because there's that set 50,000. And then if there's 100 more, it's 2,000. And then another 100, 2,000 additional. So we don't pay less if they have more members. We pay the same fee regardless. They are not tracking towards a deficit position though, based on their enhanced membership. So if membership keeps hitting that 265 mark, the intent, they set that 265 target for membership because that's the number they use to offset, like, we don't think we'll run in a deficit position and we think that's achievable, so that we shouldn't be in that position. So with additional members, we do not, they're not tracking towards deficit position.
Any other questions on the YMCA? Yes, Councillor Manning.
Do we have an update on where they are on membership right now?
Yes, so no official update, but they are still right around the 500 mark.
Okay. Any other questions on the YMCA update? Financial information? Seeing none, I'd ask for a motion to receive and file if I could, please. Councillor Morris, Councillor Westgate, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Let's go to 8B, and that's the CAO's quarterly status report, QT 2023. Amanda.
Thank you, Mayor Case. So what you'll find here is the standard quarterly update that we provide to council every quarter, obviously. And it provides a summary sheet of all of our capital projects to date, a summary of our balanced scorecard in line with our strategic plan. We will update that with the new strategic plan to track those new priorities of council. And then it also tracks all I'll say other corporate projects or things that have been carried over for council's review every quarter. And then we also, as a team, review by department anything we want to highlight that maybe isn't an official project that has a budget line item, but something that we want to highlight to council that has been completed. So you'll see a lot of like programs for Parks and Recreation and ongoing drain work for Public Works, grant applications and planning type things. But happy to take any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to receive and file. Deputy Mayor Kallenberg, Councillor Manning, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, let's move on to C, and that's professional development policy and budget. Amanda, is it you again?
It is.
Very good. Floor is yours.
Thanks, Mayor Case. So This report was provided on request from a member of council and provides a summary of both our policy on professional development as well as our annual budget allocations. So although they were included in those operational spreadsheets, I thought I'd break them out for you so you can see expenditure by department and allocation. So essentially, we are tracking at 33% so far this year of our total professional development and training budget for township. And at 70% of the total conference budget for the township as of July 28th, which is not unusual or alarming for this time of year because the year does seem to be quite front end loaded for staff and council conferences. So that's not a flag. From a purely operational standpoint, there's nothing from that I want to flag for council other than, happy to take questions and note that we will continue to monitor both conference and training budgets throughout the year to ensure that the allocations are in line with the budget.
Does anybody have any questions on this piece of business? No, seeing none, then I would ask for a motion to receive and file, if I could, please. Deputy Mayor Kellenberg, seconded by Councillor Manning. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Oh, hey, let's go to D if we can. And that's capital cost summary, East Lambton Community Complex. Is that you again, Amanda? Oh, okay. Trevor, please.
Thank you, Mayor Case. The report has a lot of numbers, a lot of information in it, but I'll give the highlights. Budget wise, it was budgeted at 13.425 million. To date, the costs are 13,424,046. There are a couple of notes, though, from what I know is still outstanding. There is another 23 to 25,000 to come in to complete the donor wall. However, we have allocated interest costs post substantial completion to the project also. As per Canadian GAAP, we should not be doing that. That will move 120 out. So essentially we're flirting with being on budget, which is fortunate. We entered forward contracts when we did the construction of the build. It secured pricing in uncertain periods. And other than that, we would have been victim to it. The next thing is approaches to finance long-term. In the budget, I proposed what I was getting from Infrastructure Ontario in terms of rates and built a model around that. Infrastructure Ontario, since that time, the rates have gone up. I've included 4 options and 4 terms with Infrastructure Ontario, each of which are going to be lower than what you're going to get from another party. However, I have approached Libro and have got a discussion paper with them whereby, in my opinion, they're very competitive and have other benefits that Infrastructure Ontario don't. Infrastructure Ontario, fixed term, it limits your capital cash flow. You're paying whatever it is that year. If you lower number of years, you're going to pay higher amount per year. There's no two ways about it. The budget that I put together included the rental of this building and paying off ELCC was combined $1 million a year. And we have those resources. Essentially what we've been doing in the past of putting away $1 million per year in reserves. And that was the number that was discussed with the previous council to focus on. I think Libro, even though they're going to be substantially higher at 6.09, have the opportunity to have higher interest payments. They also offer us a 10% lump sum of principal payment per year. So if we have a good year or we see significant growth in our own source revenues or tax base, we can put it in and bring it down. If we hit that 2 years in a row, it will then bring us under the interest payment that we will have for 20 years, 15 years, and approach the 10 years on Infrastructure Ontario based on fiscal modeling. And as I know more, I'll model it more so. It also allows us in 5 years' time to reopen the contract. And if we have other sources of revenue, we can close it out in 5 years' time, or we can do it so that we now go to a 5-year model and close it out sooner. So if council's desire is to pay this off sooner than later, my recommendation would be to approach Libro further on the discussion sheet they have presented to us.
Okay, council, does anybody have any questions? They are seeking direction. Councilor Morris.
Yeah, I got a couple here, Trevor. First of all, our water reserve is sitting at 2.9 million. What kind of interest rate are we receiving on that money?
And that money will be part of what's going probably off source into the one fund. And we've been historically hitting I think it was 7.2 since we've started investing there in the equity portion. In the equity portion. We do have a bond portion sitting in there. I like this question. I like where you're going with it. There's $1 million sitting in the bond fund, which was for the rainy day. I would like to pull that $1 million out with council direction and apply it to bring the loan down to from 9 million to $8 million.
Well, I like that talk. What I was thinking a little bit, Trevor, is we have $800,000 outstanding in donor money that's going to come in over the next 4 years. I'd like to see, okay, $1,800,000 taken out of that fund, put it directly against the debt. And then as that monies came in from the donors, throw it back in the investment one. I just hate seeing money sitting there when we can use it against the debt and knock it down $1 million right off the bat.
Through the mayor, thank you very much. You saved me a lot of explanation because that's where I was going to go with the recommendation further.
Anybody else have any questions? Again, we're looking at directions. I guess the one question I have, Trevor, is that the $9 million puzzles me a little bit, and I've been looking at it. I know that we ended up getting some FedDev money, $750,000. And my understanding at that time, the debt was, if that would take $750,000 off the 9 million would make it $8,250,000 in debt. So the $9 million that now shows up, I always envisioned with that $750,000 from FedDev that would come off the 9 million, making it $8.25 million. Am I lost somewhere here?
No, you're not lost. We can do it different ways. The $9 million also assumed that we would have the 800,000 that was short on grants coming in on day one. Donations coming in on day one. So it's just a funding shell game, if that makes sense. You can take it from your other unallocated reserves, which sit, I believe, at $3 million, and then essentially double down the payment. You can take it down to 7.25, but then it runs this council tighter on more emergent projects, or if they have other capital requirements they wish to do, it's council's direction.
So being that you have a construction loan now, that's going to probably time out very, very soon. How quickly do we have to make this decision on how we go about refinancing? I guess I'm looking for a timeline.
Very good question. The discussion paper with Libro was put together in the last 3 weeks. I have promised to them I will circulate back to them. I've also promised the parties at Infrastructure Ontario, I will circle back to them. If this is tabled for further discussion, I think they will be very understanding, so long as we do it within a timely basis.
All right, well, thank you very much. Again, this is a lot to digest at one time. There's some options that have been put on the table. We've talked about long-term debt. There's also been some discussion around the table about paying this off sooner than later in a shorter period of time. How does council wish to proceed today, knowing that we do potentially have a little bit of time?
Where were you going to take that $1 million out of?
We've made investments and it's unallocated reserves that go into our one fund account. We have $1 million sitting in there, which is a corporate bond fund that we put in there for short-term uses.
I thought you had said take it out of the water fund. We can't take it out of the water.
Can't take it out of the water fund.
Yeah, I agree. We need to take at least $1 million.
Yellow, Jerry.
There's a capital reserve fund that we could, right?
Yes.
And the inheritance reserve, that 165, why can we not use that?
The Heritage Reserve has been used this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the other one I was looking.
So just on the topic of reserves, our unspecified reserves, where are we sitting at on unspecified reserves, if I can put it that way, Trevor?
Thank you. This is a paper somehow I left on my desk. I apologize. Right now we have unencumbered reserves. This is as of the end of 2022 unaudited. The audit is coming hopefully for the next meeting. It's 3.9 million, out of which we've moved 165. So we're down to 3.73.
All right, well, thank you very much for that information. So again, council, we do not have to make a decision today. We can make a decision today. It all depends on what the wishes are of the group. Anybody wish to make any motions, or Councillor Westgate?
I just have another question. If we took more money out of the money we're getting from waste management, can we get along without it in other spots? Because sooner or later, waste management is going to be gone and we're going to have to learn to do that. I would much rather have this billing paid off before that happens, even if it means taking out another million or a $500,000 at least out of that to pay this billing off sooner.
Through your mayor, Councillor Westgate, yes, you can do that. Where it comes down to is your cash flow for capital projects, because that money's been basically directed towards capital for the last few years, and it will continue to do that. So it depends how aggressive the next few years are for capital projects, but there will be some requests that staff will come with that I will say no, because the funding isn't there if we go down that route. I've tried to present a means whereby we can do it with our existing cash flows, but it's council's decision. We will adjust accordingly.
Councillor Morris?
Yeah, just following up on Jerry's comment there. If we go with the Libro and we do generate more money from the landfill in 2 years from now, we can take that hunk of cash and put it directly against the principal. Correct?
Through your mayor, Councillor Morris, yes, we can do up to 10% of the outstanding principal per year in a one-time lump sum payment. And my recommendation, since we're discussing it right now, is you do it the moment after you have your fiscal audit, you make that payment.
Okay, anybody else? Any questions? Do we want to, council, do we want to sit on this and look at it again at the next meeting, or are we prepared to make a move on it at this particular time? Not trying to push anybody either way. It's a big chunk of business. What's Councillor Morris?
Well, I'm quite satisfied if we take that $1 million, because that's we can get rid of that, which is the other one here, the COVID reserve. We can get rid of it because
COVID is allocated reserve.
oh, okay. So anyway, but we could take the $1 million, $800,000 of it's going to be replaced from donors anyway, and put it directly against it. And but I'm afraid the interest rates go up again. What's Libra going to say?
Yeah, that's the unknown, right? I mean, we don't know where this economy is going. It's a world economy now, not just even a North American economy. So nobody has a crystal ball, I don't think, here in the room to tell us what's going to happen that way. So again, I'll ask the question. Do you want to bring this back at the next meeting? Have a little time to think on it? Is that the consensus of the room, or are we looking to? Yes, Trevor, please.
If that is consensus of the room, I can also do a model whereby we take it down to 8% with the various different impacts we have right now and prepare another term sheet so for council's review.
Well, that sounds very reasonable. How does everybody ever see heads nodding? Okay, very good. Councillor Morris?
I'll make a motion to table it until the next meeting.
Any further discussion on the tabling motion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Let's go to AD if we can. And this is a This is the reinforced concrete pad tender award that was mentioned earlier. And there is a recommendation that goes along with it as well. How does council wish to deal with the recommendation? Councillor Kallenberg.
I'll make a motion. We approve as recommended.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Manning? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, number 9A, and this is new business. It's a Touch a Truck event. We've done this in the past. Looking for council's direction to participate is what I'm assuming this is, Madam Clerk. Okay, how does council wish to be doing this? Do I have let's have a motion to make it official. Councilor Morris.
I make a motion that we continue with the Touch a Truck Equipment Show.
Do we have a seconder? Councilor Westgate? Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. So that completes the open session of today's meeting. I haven't missed anything. I've been doing that as a habit lately. So I'd ask for a motion to move in camera to deal with obviously section 239, the Municipal Act 2001, to deal with 2, 5, and 11. Do I have a motion from council to do so, please? Councillor Manning and Deputy Mayor Kallenberg, all in favor? That's carried. So this will conclude the open portion. And we thank everybody for viewing today. Thank you very much.